the most unexpected enemy you've ever had? I worked at one of those bougie daycares in Silicon Valley where parents pay over $3,000 a month for top-notch babysitting. And TBH, we made it worth it. Every one of our staff members cared more about the babies than our own lives. We even made our manager ban all sweets and juices that had cancerous ingredients like Red 40 because we didn't want the kids to grow up with health issues. But soon, everything went south. One afternoon, I saw a 5-year-old stumbling around the classroom like a drunkard and slurring her words. We assumed it was some sort of weird sugar crash and called her mom to pick her up early. But a week later, it happened to 2 more kids, then 4. All of our work phones were blowing up with worried texts and calls from parents 24/7. That stressed me out more than anything because how do you tell a parent that you don't know why their child is flipping out after being in your care? Me and my team were all as confused as each other. We started having meetings outside of work hours, aka for free, trying to get to the root of the problem. In 1 week, my supervisor called CPS on 3 families because he was convinced the parents were the cause. They found nothing. We tried to call the police, but there were 4 missing persons cases that week, so all the detectives were too busy to take our case seriously. Parents were pulling their kids out of the daycare, and our customers were dropping like flies. My manager was going insane, and she was convinced it was one of the staff members. She pulled me aside one day and said, "I'm sending all the other staff home with paid time off. Everyone except you and Gabriella. I need to see if this makes the problem stop, and if it's one of us." Unfortunately, the problems didn't stop. In fact, they got worse. 3 children got sick in 2 days. One went to the ER when her heart rate spiked way past normal levels. Me and Gabriella started losing our minds trying to figure out what was going on. We must have watched 200 hours of security footage in 2 weeks. Luckily, we found something. There was a pattern. Every single incident happened between 1 and 4 p.m. after nap time. I myself didn't know what to do with this information, but Gabriella did. I was at home one night when she called. "Hello? Please come into the daycare right now. I'll pay for your Uber if you don't want to drive." She sounded hysterical, but I agreed because I couldn't keep watching kids get hurt under my care anymore. When I walked into the daycare, I saw Gabriella going through Google Excel sheets with our schedules on them, and as soon as she saw me, she grabbed my arm. "Look, almost every single sick kid has been in the art room on the same day they got sick. The art room has to be linked to whatever's going on." Without thinking, we sprinted down the hallway to the art room. We practically tore the place apart looking for the answer. The paints looked fine. Markers, normal. But that's when I opened the Play-Doh cabinet. Everything seemed like it was fine until I opened the blue lid. There was this faint chemical smell that made my nose tingle. It was wrong. Gabriella's hands were shaking as she opened another container. The same smell filled the room. There were more containers on the higher shelves. "Put your hands up the shelves, Gabriella!" I shouted, and we collected all the containers. The next morning, we had the Play-Doh tested. Positive for sedatives. Someone had been spiking our Play-Doh. What haunted me the most was that I knew my coworkers better than anyone, and I knew it wasn't any of them. They cared too much about the kids. One of them, Adeline, once recorded herself reading bedtime stories so a toddler with attachment issues could listen to her voice at home. Another one, Fiona, is learning Spanish just so one of the immigrant children doesn't feel left out in conversations. But then something happened that made everything make sense. We were a day away from shutting down when one of our delivery drivers mentioned something weird. I saw someone from Headley, the daycare across town, near our delivery entrance 3 times this month. I smiled because that meant we finally had more evidence to show to the detectives working on our case. Turns out, Headley was our competing business, and after we opened, they started losing clients. So they started spiking the Play-Doh to make us lose clients. The owner was put in prison, and last I heard, the inmates found out what he did and killed him. Laugh out loud.